Could you re-explain, I guess, what Alliance is? Because it's very something that is related to enterprise technology.
The analogy that I always use is alliances means that you're not quite in the trenches. You're not in the trenches. You're still in the sales team, but yeah, you're not in the trenches. So an American way of putting it is they say like, oh, we're your quarterbacks. Like we're meant to originate opportunities and drive pipeline and drive sales and interact with all of the different teams. But not being that first over the fence.
Do you interact with Salesforce or do you interact with prospects?
The easiest way to say this is I spend more time at Salesforce's office than my own.
Okay.
So I annoyingly don't have a badge in, so I still have to do a visitor sign in every single time I go, but I spend more time in Salesforce's office than mine, which is exactly how it should be.
What is the objective that Slalom help Salesforce to organize this kind of event?
So my role internally is to elevate the standing of Salesforce within our clients and within the work that we're doing internally. And then externally, it's to really build our brand. Slalom is very established globally, like a $3 billion company, but new to region. So it's competing against other SIs for mindshare.
You have like the two point of view. You were working in the UK as an AE for Salesforce, and in here you are working with Slalom in Alliance. What do you prefer the most in this new type of job?
I enjoy working, if I talk about the differences between London and Sydney or the UK and Australia, it's a less mature market here for Salesforce. So there's a lot more opportunity to make an impact as an IC and win market share and opportunities. And I think because it's a less mature market, there is a certain more amount of buoyancy and energy that I see. I even think it's a markedly different atmosphere walking into the tower in Sydney to the tower in London. I don't know if that's because it's always rubbish weather in the UK or whether it's me just being like but I do see the sales teams are a lot more energized here and there's just more opportunity. There's more land to grab.
Have you found like other difference, for example, in doing business with Australian people?
If you're speaking to an Australian born and bred company, they want you to be able to look out the window and be like, oh, you see that logo on that building, we did XYZ for them, or they're a customer. And I think that's really, I think that the US can feel very far away. And I think sometimes when even Salesforce will produce all of their marketing out of the US, even the dialogue and the tonality, it's very American. And I think that really needs to be localized to land within the Australian market. But what I would say is that Australian and British culture is very similar. And the consumers feel quite similar in terms of their behaviors. So I would say that if you wouldn't, there doesn't need to be as much differentiation between those two markets versus the US, which I think is markedly different.
How did you started working with digital marketing?
So I actually was part of the student marketing team for Bumble, pre-IPO. So this was when no one had heard it, and it was before kind of the apps exploded onto the scene. So this would have been back in about 2016, 2017, and no one knew what it was. And that was really like field marketing, guerrilla marketing, and just really fun as being part of a cohort of students doing it.
Did you feel like you learn skills over there that you reuse today in your daily job?
For sure. I think even going back to the Bumble things, it's that kind of sense of that startup mentality, because it was very scrappy in everything we were trying to do. It was all focused on downloads and engagements. It was still very target driven. And even now I work for a global company, we still have to be quite startup in our mentality.
What made you choose Salesforce as a company over like the other one in tech?
Yeah, Salesforce sort of found me. I was referred inwards by a friend, and I actually started my career as a BDR. So I started at really at the bottom in MuleSoft. So this was post MuleSoft being acquired by Salesforce, but at the time they still retained a lot of autonomy from the main mothership.
What will make a great partner to a generic partner within the Salesforce ecosystem?
I think just having trust and transparency throughout the buying process is really integral. I also think, and I'll give you a slight elevator pitch here, I think it depends if we're going up against a GSI in region, so a Deloitte or an Accenture. I think you've got to think, if you're a mid-sized or even quite a large Australian privately owned company and you're signing a $1 million contract for Salesforce implementation services, really with a company like Deloitte, you are really not that important to them. Versus if you're partnering with a smaller company, that you're going to, I think, get more focus, more attention, more. That deal means a whole lot more to them in terms of their growth and what that means for their brand.
Hello everyone, today I'm with Abigail England that work with Alliance at Slalom. Thank you, Abigail, for being here. For those who don't know you already, could you tell us who you are and what you do at Slalom?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Abigail. I'm a Salesforce Alliance Manager at Slalom, which is a global consultancy firm. Been in market in Australia for about 5 years now. I've just emigrated from London. So I held a similar position in London at Omnicom Group. And I'm ex-Salesforce myself. Made the move from London to Sydney about 5 months ago. So relatively new to this continent.
So how do you like it since you just arrived in Sydney? You arrived for summer, which is quite enjoyable.
I arrived late September. So I wanted to get here before like the apex of summer hit. I mean, for boring reasons as well, because of finding a rental and things like that. But also just getting into the flow of things before it's just absolute mania and you can't walk down the street. I adore it. I will.
So do you feel like, is it like people are totally different from in the UK, or like there is some...
I mean, look, there's so many British accents around. I feel like even in my office, there are so many British people on the team. I go into the Salesforce Tower and it's a sea of Irish people, a sea of British people. Sometimes it kind of throws me. I go to a cafe and I order a coffee and the waitress is British and the chef. So sometimes I get this weird sort of, where actually am I?
I'm not too far from home.
Exactly. I can't feel homesick.
But I guess also like in the eastern part of Sydney, like Paddington is where like British people or Irish people will live.
I would fight back on that.
Oh,
I would
really?
say Coogee or Bondi. I thought I was being really untouristy in going to Paddington. So it's a mixture. It's a mixture, right? But it's a lovely, lovely spot.
That must be a great place to live. And so before you mentioned like that you was working with Salesforce related product, you were working at Salesforce back in the UK.
Yes.
I think it would be interesting to understand how you ended up working for Salesforce in your career. I saw that before working as a account executive at Salesforce back in the UK, you did a few years like in related to marketing digital or like marketing. Could you like, if we start from the beginning, could you explain like how did you started working with digital marketing at first?
Beginning of the CV, goodness. When I was at university, I did various bits of marketing work on the side. So I actually was part of the student marketing team for Bumble. Pre-IPO. So this was when no one had heard it, and it was before kind of the apps exploded onto the scene. So this would have been back in about 2016, 2017, and no one knew what it was. And that was really like field marketing, guerrilla marketing, and just really fun as being part of a cohort of students doing it.
I guess, is it a bit like what Red Bull does? I'm thinking about...
Exactly. It was what Red Bull used to absolutely do. And I never see it. And I don't know if that's because I'm not a student anymore and I'm not their target market, or whether they've just winded down that
I think they did.
style of marketing. But I mean, it was incredible. I mean... They were just giving. They would give us funds and basically give us free reign to do whatever we wanted. So that was at university. And then when I graduated, I did a couple of internships at various kind of like digital marketing agencies. Some of them on paper I thought were going to be really fun. But what I realized is that if you go into a marketing agency and they have a roster of clients, say they have PayPal and Heineken and Red Bull, well, if you get put on, I don't know, some random different account, your experience is going to be very different. And obviously when you're the intern, you kind of get the dog's work. So I just found that I spent a lot of time looking at spreadsheets and data.
Did you feel like you learn skills over there that you reuse today in your daily job?
For sure. I think even going back to the Bumble things, it's
Yeah.
that kind of sense of that startup mentality because it was very scrappy
Yeah.
in everything we were trying to do. It was all focused on downloads and engagement. So it was still very target driven. And even now I work for a global company, we still have to be quite startup in our mentality. Well, I don't think you should ever lose that startup mindset
Yeah.
if you're trying to grow. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I guess I agree. Like you need to be very like agile, like in taking decision, and like slow and long process usually are not great. So like being able to be reactive is a good thing, I guess. And so when after like all this year of marketings, you decided to work as an AE for Salesforce in the UK. Like how did you like this first day at Salesforce? Because I guess it's a totally different world, like ecosystem. And also what made you choose Salesforce as a company over like the other one in tech?
Yeah, Salesforce sort of found me. I was referred inwards by a friend, and I actually started my career as a BDR. So I started at at the bottom in MuleSoft. So this was post MuleSoft being acquired by Salesforce, but at the time they still retained a lot of autonomy from the main mothership. And MuleSoft had a reputation at the time for just making really great hires and it just being a really dynamic place to work. And there was a lot of energy. It was very fun walking into the tower in London every day. A very international team, you know, Canadians, Americans, people from Denmark. And it was really, really, really incredible. Obviously now, like as they've become kind of more assimilated into Salesforce, they've kind of lost that individual identity, and that's necessary, right? They've had to come in and fold into Salesforce, but I'm very grateful that I started in MuleSoft and then slowly transitioned into core.
And I saw like the tower seems very nice over there.
The
like,
tower? I think the Sydney Tower is markedly better.
But it's brand new as
it's brand new and it's $2 billion. It should be better. The London Tower is great, but I mean, you're looking out over East London and grey skies, whereas here you're looking out over azure blue water.
So that must be different.
I have quite a strong opinion on that.
And I saw like you were originally from Bristol in the UK.
Went to university in Bristol. So went to university down south. I'm actually from the Midlands, which you can't hear in my accent.
I cannot.
I've been down south for a very long time. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's probably picking up on Australia because my team is completely Australian. I work a lot with our Salesforce practice is mainly Australian here, so I feel like I'm picking up the Australian twang.
But still, I think it must be very amazing when you started like working there. And so as you mentioned, like MuleSoft was a brand new acquisition, so it was probably a bit like what we see with Slack. Like Slack today is Slack by Salesforce, but it's still like an individual product in a way, I find. Like
so I started at Salesforce in 2021 and MuleSoft was acquired in 2018. And I mean how I kind of landed up in alliances from MuleSoft was I saw that your success really as an account exec, other than, you know, timing, territory and talent was also how the MuleSoft sellers interacted with their core AEs at Salesforce and their relationships with them. And I saw that there was almost a direct correlation between a MuleSoft AE's success and their brand and how they worked with their core counterpart. And I think I really sort of leaned into the alliances side of things and decided that I didn't want to go down the AE route.
But it probably a bit in a way related. Like what an AE does like as a skill is something that you continue to use in Alliance. Like
for sure, it's very sales focused. The analogy that I always use is alliances means that you're not quite in the trenches. You're not in the trenches. You're still in the sales team, but you're not in the trenches. So an American way of putting it is they say like, oh, we're your quarterbacks. Like we're meant to originate opportunities and drive pipeline and drive sales and interact with all of the different teams, but not being that first over the fence. Is the analogy I use.
And like when you were working, like what was the name of the Alliance company you work for in the UK?
So I worked within Omnicom Group. So Omnicom Group acquired a regional SI in the UK.
Okay.
And Omnicom they do Microsoft, Adobe, and they wanted to bring in Salesforce capabilities. So they acquired a Salesforce partner. So I joined as part of that acquisition.
Yeah.
And listen, great place to work. I told myself after Salesforce that I would work for a less convoluted matrix organization. I go to a smaller company, and then I ended up working at one of the biggest media companies in the world. I was like, oh, for goodness sake.
And so basically, like, so you were working like at Salesforce, and like mostly in sales. So like
sales,
yeah. And then once you started to work in Alliance, like, could you re-explain, I guess, what Alliance is? Because it's very something that is related to enterprise technology, I find. And I guess, like, when you start working in the Salesforce ecosystem, you hear a lot about what Alliance is. Like, you hear about it, but you don't get it at the first time. Like, it's something that is quite niche as a job. And as you say, like, you participate in generating like sales and pipeline, but indirectly. But how indirectly? Like, that's the thing that is hard to understand, I guess.
I look, honestly, no day is the same, and I know everyone says that, but with Alliances it really is a blend. So it could be a blend of pre-sales activities, so that's positioning accelerators or IP that Slalom have developed to accounts and sales teams. It could be marketing activations, whether that's digital marketing, whether it's we're running with Salesforce are running like an immersive AI experience in Martin Place in Sydney this week. So that's actual on the ground marketing. It's networking with sales teams. It's interacting a lot with the go-to-market team that I sit across, and helping them plug into Salesforce better. And I think the thing is with Alliances is that it's not expected, and you can't be a subject matter expert in every single vertical and field. So my role covers private and public sector across all industries. Obviously, there are some that we don't tend to play in this region, but there is a tremendous amount. There's a massive disparity in the accounts and the companies we engage with. And it's not my job to go into the weeds of how a super fund is approaching digital transformation, but I need to have a high level understanding. So I don't know, if I take a life sciences company in Australia, I need to understand the challenge facing them in, I don't know, replatforming off Viva, and have a high level understanding of how they might approach that migration. But I don't need to go into the weeds on it. Thank goodness.
And you probably like have like people that are specialists to rely on, like, for this kind
teamwork.
of
And that's why I love it. It's just really working as part of a team. And I mean, you're only as good as the team behind you. So my job is to bring the best of the team together.
Yes, that makes sense. But what I'm trying to understand is, in your daily job, like, because like, so you work at Slalom as a Salesforce Alliance, but do you interact with Salesforce or do you interact with prospects?
So the easiest way to say this is I spend more time at Salesforce's office than my own. So I annoyingly don't have a badge in, so I still have to do a visit to sign in every single time I go, but I spend more time at Salesforce's office than mine, which is exactly how it should be. So I spend most of my time with Salesforce's sales team. Occasionally I'll be on customer calls, but really in terms of time efficiency, it wouldn't be the best use of my time to sit from a stage 1 to a stage 6 of a deal on calls.
So when you like interact with Salesforce, so you are planning activities like, as you mentioned, like the event like downstairs in Martin Place. That is nice. World tour, like
World tour, that just ate into my life for a month.
But my question, I guess, is what is the objective? And it's a genuine question that I would like to understand. What is the objective that Slalom help Salesforce to organize this kind of event? Does that?
I mean, I'll give you like a two-pronged answer. So Slalom doesn't just implement Salesforce technology. We also are a Microsoft house and an AWS house. So I just sit in the Salesforce practice. So my role internally is to elevate the standing of Salesforce within our clients and within the work that we're doing internally. So that's making sure that we're positioning Salesforce over Dynamics, for instance. And then externally, it's to really build our brand. Slalom is very established globally, like $3 billion company, but new to region.
Yeah.
So it's competing against other SIs for mindshare.
Okay.
And yeah, a mixture of opportunity origination at Slalom we then bring to Salesforce. And then also when Salesforce are closing deals, making sure that we are one of the preferred implementation partners.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like makes sense. And like there is some alliance partner that are individual as well.
Yes.
I remember like working with a practice like Sky Solutions. They used to it's a smaller practice than Slalom. They used to work with an agency that was specialized in alliance. So I guess it's a function that can be either integrated to the organization.
Oh, outsourced?
Yeah.
That's unusual. Okay. No, I haven't. No, I can't imagine. No, okay. I think I prefer to be in-house.
Do you think that would be very hard to work with an external partner?
Yes, because of how you need to interact with the teams internally.
Okay.
It's kind of my job to be everyone's best friend.
Okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically there is like Cloud Alliance. So they are like the agency that refer as an external practice. But I guess when you explain it, it makes sense that this is way better if it's an integrated function to the organization. And so what do you feel like you like the most over there compared to working as an AE at Salesforce? Like, because you have like the two point of view. You were working in the UK as an AE for Salesforce, and in here you are working with Slalom in Alliance. What do you prefer the most in this new type of job?
I mean, look, I really wanted to emigrate. So I actually sold myself into Slalom.
Yeah.
They weren't even hiring at the time.
Oh, really?
And I sort of prospect my way in, which is very salesy and very forward of me. But I knew that I had to be quite bullish to make the move work.
Yeah.
What do I enjoy more? I enjoy working, if I talk about the differences between London and Sydney or the UK and Australia, it's a less mature market here for Salesforce.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more opportunity to make an impact as an IC. And win market share and opportunities. And I think because it's a less mature market, there is a certain more amount of buoyancy and energy that I see. I even think it's a markedly different atmosphere walking into the tower in Sydney to the tower in London. I don't know if that's because it's always rubbish weather in the UK or whether it's me just being like very
moving to a new country,
sunshine filled and having a certain spring in my step here. But I do see the sales teams are a lot more energized here and there's just more opportunity. There's more land to grab. Salesforce has not penetrated like even 50% of some industries. Whereas in the UK, you're perhaps talking to accounts that have evaluated Salesforce 4 to 5 times and decided against it. And
I don't understand that part, like evaluate 4 or 5 times.
So say you're an enterprise company and you go through a procurement cycle every couple of years to look at your core platforms, and Salesforce has been in the running and has, I don't know, not won those cycles for a few consecutive years. You're in a harder position.
So it's way more established over there than here.
It's just a more mature market. So I think for someone young in their career, I much prefer being over here.
It's more it comes back to the fact of being a bit like not a startup but some a reactive environment. I guess
it's a little bit more hustle. Not that London is walk in the park.
And so like you went like to Salesforce World Tour, all these events.
Yes, the ICC.
Do you feel like over there the atmosphere is also different than what you can find in the UK?
I mean, look, Salesforce is very good at marketing. So it's hard to judge from these big events. It's only when like the dust kind of settles that you can really establish the ROI. And look, any world tour is great. I've only been to London and Sydney, but I'm sure I'll go to San Fran in September for Dreamforce this year. So
that would be nice.
That'll be.
I haven't been.
No, you haven't been to San Fran.
Maybe.
Thing is, I think I'll have to take the next week off work because it's just so exhausting. You're just obviously walking around this huge campground. It's like reInvent in Vegas when AWS do that. I mean, it's just all consuming. Drinking the Kool-Aid. Just come out of it bleeding blue, really.
And so you have been working with Salesforce. and this is like your technology that you are not.
I wish it was my technology. It's sadly not my technology.
But I mean, like you are not planning to work in the future, like for AWS or like Salesforce is really like your area of expertise right now at Slalom.
AWS have lost me as a potential future employer due to their aggressive policies on return to the office.
Oh, really?
No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
I'm very much, although obviously Salesforce and AWS are very tightly interconnected now. So I get exposure to them.
Yeah, they are quite
that.
connected. And
but for now, no, I'm quite happy on this side of the fence.
And so you did like a lot of work like in Alliance, and one of the questions that we prepared together was like, from your point of view, what will make a great partner to a generic partner within the Salesforce ecosystem?
Yes.
And I guess it will be interesting to speak about to answer this question in your view. What would you say about that?
Goodness. I mean, many things. I think we talk a lot about trust and transparency, which can kind of feel like throwaway marketing jargon. But I do think, it's a very competitive landscape.
Yeah.
And I think often we find ourselves coming up against Salesforce's own professional services, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which can be really difficult.
Yeah.
And I think the way I approach these things is just complete transparency from the start. I mean, there are situations when perhaps a customer has explicitly requested that. Perhaps they feel that holds Salesforce more accountable for a high risk implementation, or it's a re-implementation of something that didn't go right the first time.
Yeah.
And then I can appreciate it and obviously accept it. But I think just having trust and transparency throughout the buying process is really integral. I also think, and I'll give you a slight elevator pitch here, I think it depends if we're going up against a GSI in region, so a Deloitte or an Accenture.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think you've got to think, if you're a mid-sized or even quite a large Australian privately owned company, and you're signing a $1 million contract for Salesforce implementation services, really, with a company like Deloitte, you are really not that important to you're not making a sizable impact on their bottom line and their practice growth, right?
Yeah.
Versus if you're partnering with a smaller company, that you're going to, I think, get more focus, more attention, that deal means a whole lot more to them in terms of their growth and what that means for their brand image. And I think that often equates to a more successful project and a better working relationship. So I always think that it's sometimes a benefit to not be one of the large incumbents that sort of can rest on their laurels.
So what, based on your view, what would be like the criteria to choose like an implementation partner? Like, for example, like you mentioned, like the difference between Slalom and like another one like Deloitte or Accenture is that you could receive more consideration from Slalom, as like the other will deal with like projects that are way more important than like an SMB, for example.
Or for example, if you're like, look, you're our first life sciences cloud implementation, not that that's live yet, but you're our first health cloud implementation in region, so we'll give you carte blanche. Do you know what I mean? I think that's really crucial. So I think that's one thing. In terms to the process, I mean, look, it's a decision that needs to be very considered. I would say now in 2025, companies are more cognizant of ever of consulting spend and ROI, and delivering ROI as quickly as possible, and making sure that they're not going to buy software that just sits on the shelf. So I think having a history of statistics and data that you can speak to where you've implemented similar projects at companies in their field, and you can speak to the metrics you've achieved over X time period, having that referenceability is really integral. Obviously having high customer satisfaction scores and all that, but I think really it's the emphasis on the ROI. And also I think one thing we talk about a lot at Slalom is like stewardship transfer, which again, I'll break down, but I think it's of no benefit for anyone to just body shop people into a company.
What the body shop?
When I say body shop, I mean just like bring in like a team of 10 developers, 10 architects, associates, and then when the project concludes and they leave, they take all that knowledge with them, and then your team are just sort of struggled, and then you end up having to sign up to a managed services contract for God knows how long. And that's not, I don't think, what any leader wants now. So I think it's really important to us as a company that we really uplift teams. And essentially, you know,
like upskill them
and not be looking at like, how can we embed ourselves that this company are tied to us and can never leave, but how can we actually make sure they can do this on their own?
I guess that's a real challenge, mostly like for technical products. We can really see that sometimes like customer implement solution, but like they need like the partner to work hand to hand with on the long term to deliver specific campaigns, for example, because their team internally are not able to run the campaign by themselves. So if you guys are able to upskill like the internal team to run like the campaign and to handle the product, it's a great thing. It must be not easy as well, because sometimes, for example, like
no project is easy,
and like it's like everything that's related to coding, like development, like technical development can be hard to learn for a marketer, for example.
I mean, look, of course it's interesting because with AgentForce, the whole premise is that it's meant to be, you know, clicks, not code. And I think it's really interesting looking at the long tail of what that means for consultancy companies, because that surely means less consultancy revenue and work on the table if we're making this software easier and easier to implement. But of course the answer is that a lot of the work that needs to be done is around the AI strategy and the change management surrounding that. So again, it's looking at like, okay, you're going to partner with a company that has that broad set of skills, not just plug in and go for the technology.
That makes sense. I think like AgentForce, like like it's like the like click and code, but it will still like it still rely a lot on Salesforce as a product, like Salesforce core, like for like the flow and all the action.
And of course you need DataCloud, which is that's simple to set up. So it's not there yet, but I'm saying that's the long-term vision, right?
That would be interesting. And so you are focused on public and private sector as industry, you mentioned. How did you ended up like being like on this two like segment? And like is it like what interests you the most? Like, for example, what are the difference and how did you end up choosing this two like segment?
I spend more of my time working with the private sector, just because the nature of how public sector companies procure means that there is not less alliances activities that you can do, but I suppose arguably less alliances supported activities that you can do around that. A lot of the time you're waiting for procurement cycles. So I spend more of my time with the private sector, and do a lot with financial services organizations. Which is obviously a very crowded, competitive marketplace, but ultimately a rewarding vertical. And a real mixture, so a real variety of industries.
And do you feel like, is there like you mentioned you started with MuleSoft as a product? Now you are focused on Salesforce core.
Yes, I mean we still have MuleSoft capabilities, and we still have delivered MuleSoft work. And I'm a very big fan of MuleSoft. But predominantly now it's AgentForce and Data Cloud. Right?
So is that like the product that you focus on the most at the moment?
Yes, we mimic Salesforce's go-to-market, which is AgentForce and Data Cloud. But then look, Dreamforce last year, we hadn't even heard of a digital labor platform. We hadn't even heard the word AgentForce. And that was less than a year ago. So I'm really hoping that remains the primary go-to-market.
We don't know what will be tomorrow, like in terms of new products.
It's really difficult to pivot. Like a lot of the work I do is marketing related, you know, the pace of change and adoption, I really do think if you went on holiday for 2 weeks, you would come back, the AgentForce pricing would have changed, the functionality would have changed, there would be a new funding program you could have missed the boat on. I think you just really can't afford to sleep at the moment.
But I think that's what is exciting.
Of course.
I think it's like the innovation of the product, the fact that like things are evolving and moving fast, and like and also like the global strategy, like with like this type of promise that is the customer 360 view. All of that is interesting, I find, and it's a thing that was announced a while ago, like this idea to have a overview of your customer, but now we start to see like the real product that will allow us to implement this kind of function. Like it's not a dream, it's like a reality that people can now implement, so it's quite interesting.
Well, I think there's still a massive pervading perception of Salesforce outside of the world that we work in as just a CRM. And it's a conversation that I often have with friends when I say I work
what do you do
with Salesforce. And so I think there's still a long way to go in terms of breaking down that view of Salesforce as actually being a digital labor, as now moving to be a digital labor platform. And I think we have to move fast because Microsoft are going to be nipping at the heels soon in terms of coming out with their own autonomous agents, I'm sure. Whereas right now, I genuinely believe Salesforce have a far superior product. Like if I look at Copilot, it's not autonomous. It's, clues in the name. It's just assistive.
I haven't seen is it available for Dynamics?
So we're a Teams house, so we use Copilot, and I think AgentForce is leaps ahead. I've perhaps been listening to too many Mark Benioff interviews, but I think Copilot is very disappointing.
Well, I guess everyone has different function, and hopefully Salesforce will be the most interesting one to work with. But
definitely the most fun.
So like you mentioned, you spend most of your time right now working on AgentForce and DataCloud. But do you think what kind of activities? I'm not sure if you are able to speak about it or to disclose it, but if you have an illustration for to help people to understand the role of an alliance, do you have an explanation or something that you can explain about an activity that you did related to Alliance to promote this product?
Yes. So Week of World Tour, we ran a series of workshops. So AI-led workshops led by one of our global AI delivery leads that we flew over from Houston. So we ran a series of workshops in the Slalom Sydney office, 2 hours where we just really unpacked, customers have lots of ideas about what they want to do with AI, but they don't know how to prioritize those or even whether it's feasible. And where's best to start. So we ran a selection of workshops last week. So that's one example of a great pre-sales agenda you can do. So things like that.
Helping the customer to navigate through AI in a way.
And just getting people excited about actually what this technology could do. Because look, Salesforce is like an excitable child sometimes, and they'll release Net Zero Cloud or they'll release something or other, and they do a lot of marketing around it. And sometimes customers can kind of feel a sense of, they call it here comes the Salesforce marketing bus again, having to tell me about this new product. So, it's really important that we actually tell customers, no, you should actually care about this one more than you cared about Net Zero Cloud, more than you cared about maps or whatever it is. So I think that enablement and that education piece, and I think that's when I really like actually sitting outside of the mothership, because I think sometimes when you're a Salesforce account executive and you're picking up an account and perhaps you're the third, heck, even fourth AE that customer has seen in maybe 1 or 2 fiscals, I think you aren't in that position as a trusted advisor. You're just viewed as someone who's trying to sell them more licenses. So I think that when we can come in as a partner, particularly as Slalom isn't just a Salesforce practice, and we have the Microsoft and AWS experience, and we can say, look, these are the 4 options you could take, and this is our experience delivering across A, B, C. That we can kind of come in with that tech agnostic view.
It's more
and that lands
an advisor.
Exactly.
Than a seller.
And even if it ends up being Salesforce eventually, at least it's been a thorough evaluation. I think that's something a position that Salesforce aren't always privy to.
And do you think in the future, 5-10 years, you could work for Salesforce again? And or what would be
you see it view? A lot. You see it a lot of boomerangs, we call it. You see a lot of people work at Salesforce professional services and then go to a partner, and then you see people go to a partner and then become an AE and then pass business back to their old colleagues and their own teams. You see an awful lot of that, particularly I've noticed in Australia. So I think, look, it's a very
we never know.
It's a very small market here, and it strikes me. I feel like I've been here 5 months, and I feel I'll walk around the city and I bump into more people than I did in London, even though I've been in London 6 years, which is bizarre. But it's such a much smaller radius. In London, it's you had a partner in Shoreditch, you had a partner in Soho, one in Bishopsgate, and you're all like this. Whereas here, everyone's on top of each
other. I guess.
So it's a lot easier to network. Which is beautiful.
So did you feel what do you like the most about Alliance and like working as an AE in the past? Is it like the social aspect of like interacting with people, or like what would be like the key point that you feel, yes, I like my job?
Yes. There's a perception in, I'd say more in the UKI, that alliances is just, they have so much fun and they conduct so much business at the pub or over drinks.
Yeah.
And I think maybe in London there's an element of truth to that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a very early riser, so I was never doing late shifts at the pub. And that's probably why I've emigrated. But there's definitely that perception of alliances as being a very fun job in the UK. And the days that I enjoy most and that I come home feeling most energized are when I've been like face to face. Like, I think despite agentic AI, there's an element of alliances which is very old fashioned, in that it very much is the strength of your personal relationships and face to face interactions and work. So I think there's that old fashioned element that I really, really enjoy in this digital world.
Yeah. I think like mostly we were speaking with like someone like the other day, and he mentioned like mostly in enterprise sales, like human will continue to be like very important in like the deal and like transaction.
Fingers crossed.
I think it still will be like, because as you mentioned, like the personal relationship and the fact to meet face to face is very important. Like a lot of people say we are losing so much in the interaction when it's only on digital screen, like 100%. On a screen.
I sometimes don't recognize people if I've been on calls with them. I could have been on like 3-4 calls with them, and then I see them in real life. I see them in an elevator. And I can't. I'm like, goodness, they look familiar. And then I'm. It's just not the same. Even people's voices. People have got like crackly AirPods in. You're hearing like some awful audio quality.
That's very interesting. And
so
how many percentage of your job, what's the ratio between like being in social environment and like being like on the laptop, like preparing activities, or like being like very
I think
focused?
I probably tend to do a bite off more than I can chew sometimes, and I forget I don't leave time to get from A to B. And then I'm running around various locations like a headless chicken, and I'm running in heels. And it's raining, or I don't know. And then so I think sometimes you have to have some of the virtual stuff, otherwise you just can't do it, right? And then also I work, a lot of my team is based in Melbourne. So a lot of my calls internally will be with my Melbourne team, and we also have a really, really, really great team in Auckland as well.
Something very interesting that we spoke with a guy called Ivan that came here is that with the time as a salesperson, you learn to define if a meeting will be useful in real life or it can be done virtually. Like,
okay, interesting.
Do you feel that aspect as well? So it's basically what he explained is like based on his customer base, he know which customer should be seen in real life and which one will be a sort of waste of time because it doesn't bring.
I'd love to hear how he like his qualification criteria for that. What I will say, and again, new to region, so bear with me, but I have heard people say that there are certain cities in Australia where face-to-face meetings are a lot more important. Sydney is very digital, so probably less important. But in places like Brisbane, I think it's you really need to have boots on the ground. It's particularly with public sector and things like that. Like you need to have people in Wellington, Auckland, etc. So I think I think there are regional differences by state in Australia, which is super interesting.
I think like the COVID like impacted that a lot. Like because I remember when I came in Australia, so it was 6 years ago, and I was looking like for like a job in here. I used to like have like 8 coffee in a day, and it was like you were
it's terrible for cortisol. That's terrible.
But it was like something that people will say yes, let's do it, yes, let's do it, you know, like where it was really like in the culture. I feel like to meet people and grab a coffee with them, where like once the COVID happened, like people like start to forget about this part, and now it's probably getting back to it.
I think so. I'm a big fan for a networking coffee. But I don't always get. I mean, sometimes you say coffee, it's not coffee. But I certainly can be racking up 8 a day.
Yeah, that's very important. And you mentioned like you are like you like to wake up early in the morning. like what do you do like to feel good as an individual in your head? Because like I guess when you meet that many people, sometimes like
You
there
have
is
to recharge
day,
your social battery.
yeah, and also like there is day where you like that are better than the other, and like I guess like do you have something that you do aside from your work just to make you feel like on a good balance the
Oh,
rest
for
of the
sure.
time?
Like a 10-step morning routine.
Yeah,
Like obviously not possible every day. If it rains, it kind of throws me.
yeah.
But yeah, like I have to have about 2 hours to myself before I deliver any shareholder value.
Ah, okay, yeah,
Like otherwise it just doesn't happen. So
yeah,
yeah, big on the morning routines. So and look, Sydney's the perfect place for it, right?
yeah.
Like I don't go to them, but my gym does classes from 5 a.m.,
Ah, okay,
which is madness to
yeah.
me.
Which one do you go to?
Locals.
I don't know it.
Yeah, locals. And a lot of Salesforce people go there as well. So thank
Really?
goodness I can't
Is
escape.
it Paddington?
A couple of locations.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I personally would have been no use to anyone come 4 p.m. if I was getting up that early. So that's a little too early even for me.
Yeah. I feel like going to the gym the morning is definitely one thing that helped to
Oh yeah. When I go back to London for a holiday, I'm going to be up and there's going to be no one awake to talk to
yeah.
me. Oh, there will be. Yeah.
Because you feel over there like people wake up late
Yes.
later than
But then
here.
they'll get into the office later and work later, I would
Okay,
say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what else have you found? Like, so you mentioned like a range of difference between like UK people and Australian one. You also say that there is a lot of British people that are
So
living
many.
in
In the eastern
Australia.
suburbs, yeah.
But have you found like other difference, for example, in doing business with Australian people? That
Great question.
yeah,
Doing business with Australian people, I think people really need stories that are local.
okay,
I think, look, Slalom has tremendous global
yeah,
experience and assets and great global credentials. But I think if you're speaking to an Australian born and bred company,
okay,
they want you to be able to look out the window and be like, oh, you see that logo on that building, we did XYZ for them, or they're a customer. And I think
okay,
that's really, I think that the US can feel very far away. And I
yeah,
think sometimes when even Salesforce will produce all of their marketing out of the US, even the dialogue and the tonality,
yeah,
it's very American.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that really needs to be localized to land within the
yeah,
Australian market. But what I would say is that Australian and British culture is very similar,
yeah,
and the consumers feel quite similar in terms of their behaviors.
yeah.
So I would say that if you wouldn't, there doesn't need to be as much differentiation between those two markets
Yeah.
versus the US, which I think is markedly different.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
like in your view, like the use case must be like Australian based company, like when you like interact with a prospect, for example, like you
Yeah.
would like to see like example from other Australian company that implemented Salesforce, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I think you can't rest on your global credentials too much. Like,
Okay.
lean on them when you need to.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be in region
Yeah.
delivery work to really resonate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. And so have you been to other cities than Sydney?
Melbourne.
Okay. Because I think like I'm not sure, but I've heard that Melbourne is even more like British than Sydney, or like I'm not sure if
It
that's
feels
correct.
quite European.
Yeah,
It
it
feels like
feels
a
really
kind of, it reminds
'cause
me
it's
of
raining.
Madrid in a way. Like the back streets kind of feel like
Yeah.
the back streets of Barcelona,
Yeah, yeah,
place like that. I really haven't spent that much time there, but yeah, it does feel more European
yeah, yeah,
in a way that I would find hard to make peace with, being that far away from my
yeah,
mother to have a similar experience. That's why I'm in Sydney, because it's so different.
yeah. I think it's quite enjoyable over here. Like I
Yes.
couldn't live in Melbourne.
Yes. It's not easy dealing with the Australian Immigration
Yeah.
Office, so it better be good.
Yeah. And so like for like Salesforce and working as an alliance, like what would be your plan like in the near future, or like I guess what could we wish you like in the future?
I think just in market growth, like Slalom has only been in the Australian market just touching 5 years.
Yeah.
So still just a lot of mind share, brand visibility, and things like that are what I spend most of my time thinking about and working on.
Yeah.
And then I'm very bullish on AgentForce. I would like to see more Microsoft houses bring Salesforce technology in.
Okay.
So I'm very bullish on that. And I think, look, I'm 5 months into Australia, so just really like embedding myself in and my network here.
Yeah.
So definitely lots to do.
Yeah, and I guess it will be very interesting. I guess like the next 2 years, like to discover like how like Australian people are.
Whether they're nice to me.
Yeah, like I find, and that's probably just for my part, but I used to live in Sweden, and like it was so easy to make friends over there. Like in Sweden, like in 6 months, 1 year, I had a group of friends. Where in Australia, it took me like way longer to. There is something that say like Australian are very cliquey. And
I've heard this. Yeah, I've heard this an awful lot. And listen, I think it does ring true. I think it's a big country, and I think at the UK, everyone moves away and will move to a different city at 18, and so there's a certain amount of people kind of have to sever ties with the people that they grew up with. So I think that stays with you for the rest of your 20s. And then people tend to kind of hunker down in like 30s and like not really make that many new friends. Whereas I think in Australia, because people will often go to university in the town that they live in and often live at home, they don't have that push. But look, I have a real mixture.
Very true.
Yeah, I have a real mixture of friends, but I think and really international as well, like Canadian friends, American friends, which I love. Because most of my friends in the UK were just British. But I think, look, it's all the cliche things. It's tennis, it's run clubs, it's things like that. But it's about consistency, right? You can't just go once and not go again.
Important, I think, like over here.
Like, and I mean, look, you can't like. I just think Sydney's really small. You know, I'll go to I was at tennis last night and playing against a guy that works on the same team, you know, as my housemate, and it's just such a small world. Like, you know, that's why you need to be nice to everyone.
Yeah, but it was great to talk with you.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.